Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're working on a mid-bald fade on coarse, thinner hair. This type of hair can be a little tricky because it's light and moves around easily. So I wouldn't say it's a totally different approach. It's really the same system I always use. The difference is in the little details. With thinner hair, it's those small adjustments that can make a big difference, and you'll see exactly what I mean as we go through the haircut. Now, I did start by setting my baseline with a trimmer. For those of you who are new, I usually use my clippers to create the bald line when I'm fading, as it does make it easier to blend later. I only use a trimmer for content purposes. Now, with the number 3 guard closed, I am setting my length, my foundation on the sides, and as I work this up, I am flicking out as I approach that parietal ridge area where the head starts to curve towards the top. Now, after that, I come in with my 1.5 guard closed to go up to where I want that dark area of my fade to begin. That's usually what I go by when going in with the 1.5. And then to blend that line, I just open up the 1.5 without switching guards and flick it right into the number 3 guard. And now, like I've explained before, I've got my clipper blade angled out a little more here. The reason I do that is because on this type of hair texture, if I keep the blade angled in more, it's gonna cut lighter and just give me a completely different shade. So by keeping the blade out a bit, I have more control over how it blends. I'm kind of just gliding over the line, skimming over it. This will help to solidify that ceiling or roof of my fade before I move on. Now, with this kind of thinner hair, the challenge isn't bulk, it's the movement. Every time you run the clipper over, the hair is gonna want to shift or move around. That's why it's important to consistently comb or brush the hair back down. Keeping it laid in place will ensure that you're cutting evenly and not chasing the hair around that's just been pushed around. Now, moving on to the bottom section, I went in with the 0.5 guard closed, taking it about an inch above the baseline. Then I'll open the lever and blend that 0.5 right into the rest of my fade. On this particular head of hair, the 0.5 open just melted nicely into the blend. It's a great example of when less is more, and you don't always need to stack multiple guards to get a clean transition. The key here is to really just glide a bit over it, like I said earlier, not too much pressure. You also want to start slightly with your clipper angled out a bit. If nothing cuts, then little by little, angle in your clipper more until it blends without it being too light. Now, being left with a bit of the baseline after this, I'm going to clean that up using no guard with the lever closed. And as I move upward, I'm gradually opening the lever little by little. Remember, the more you open the lever, the less hair you're cutting. That's exactly what you want, because as you move higher, you don't want to push the fade up or make it shorter, higher on the head. The goal is always short to long and clean and consistent. And again, same concept applies with the clipper on no guard. I'm using light, controlled flicks right on the line, keeping it soft and natural without digging in too hard. And like I've mentioned before, if the line isn't going away, try applying a bit of pressure first before going in with something shorter. And after this, I also just went in with my thinning shears to detail before using the shaver underneath. That way everything just blends together smoothly. And I do like to mention that when I'm using the shaver, I'm not applying too much pressure. I'm just gliding it gently across the skin and only shaving what's necessary. I also want to point out something that often gets overlooked, the crown area. My client here had his crown messed up in a previous haircut, and I think a lot of barbers underestimate how crucial the crown is. If you're doing a buzz cut or a high fade, sure, you can run straight down to the crown. But on a mid fade or a drop fade, preserving that crown is key to maintaining the natural head shape. Kill the crown and the whole cut just looks off, so always respect that area. When I'm using the shaver, what I mean by only shaving what's necessary is I'm looking at the fade as a whole and making sure the contrast from light to dark looks right. So instead of just clearing everything, I'll kind of shave into the fade, if that makes sense. Just enough to create that clean transition. Now, we all make mistakes, pro, beginner, doesn't matter. Sometimes I'll accidentally leave a harsh line with the shaver. If that happens, I'll go back in with my trimmers to clean it up. And if I push a little too high with the trimmers, then I'll fix it with the clippers. The point is, don't be afraid to iterate. A good barber isn't someone who never makes mistakes, it's someone who knows how to correct them. That's why I also like to keep my fades a little more spread out, so I give myself enough room to adjust if I need to. It takes the pressure off and it gives you more space to fix things without overworking the haircut. Now, moving on to the fringe, my client likes his fringe lined up, but in this case the corners were a bit weak. And when I say weak, I mean there isn't a lot of density there. Some spots don't have as much hair. That's where placement becomes important. You don't want to push the lineup too high just to make it look full, because then it looks unnatural. But you also don't want to keep it too low, because that can leave the weak spots showing and expose the scalp. The key is finding the right balance, high enough to create fullness, but not so high that it looks pushed back. So what I like to do is set the line in first with the clippers. That helps carve out the shape and remove most of the bulk. Then I'll come back in with the trimmers to refine everything, making the lineup sharper, cleaner, and more precise. Now, to his liking, I did apply a bit of enhancements to sharpen up the finish. Then we proceeded to style his hair, first applying sea salt spray while it was still damp, then adding a bit of clay. I don't think I showed that part, but after this I blow dried his hair while using a diffuser, using higher heat but at a lower speed, because all I pretty much want is the heat coming from the blow dryer. So I kept the dryer too at a bit of a distance, and I'm just scrunching the hair with my hand to guide the movement. You know, that gave his fringe an overall shape, a nice natural finish, as well as a crown, you know, without blowing everything too flat. We did bring his shape back to life. And that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully you found something helpful in here. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. You guys really keep me going. I've got some new cuts dropping soon that are going to be scissor work heavy. So if you're struggling with graduation or anything like that, stay tuned. Peace.